Hi students, today we're going to learn about prepping your pizza lab. You guys are going to be cooking pizza and scones this week. These are both baking recipes. I want you to make sure you have a set of measuring cups and measuring spoons because once you get into baking, baking is super precise. If you kind of like throw a bunch of chicken into your stir fry, you're still going to have a stir fry. It'll still taste good. But if you throw extra flour or extra yeast or extra eggs into a baking recipe, it can really mess up the recipe. So you want to make sure you measure very, very accurately this week. We're going to do some review. What is leavening? Leavening is any kind of agent that helps dough rise, just like in this GIF. What is yeast? It is a biological leavening agent. It's a living fungus that helps our bread rise. Remember, what feeds the yeast beast? Sugar, moisture, and warmth. That's what yeast needs to develop. What is gluten and why is it important for bread? Gluten is a protein that helps make dough stretchy and give bread that spongy texture. Most importantly, it works with leavening agents like yeast, trapping the air released by them. Here's some new vocabulary. Kneading. You guys are going to be doing some kneading of your pizza dough, just like the chef is here. And the chef is stretching it out. If you remember how gluten works, it's like the glue in your dough, and it stretches when you knead. Pizza has a chewy texture that's really pleasant, and it has that texture because the chef who made the pizza kneaded the dough for a long, long time. Good pizza is hand kneaded for about 15 minutes. And because of that kneading, it stretches out all the gluten inside the dough and it makes your pizza chewy. If you don't knead your dough for enough time, or you kind of just lightly touch it instead of really pushing on it, the gluten won't develop and your pizza dough won't be as good. It'll be like kind of too soft and not chewy. So kneading is working the dough into a uniform mixture by pressing and folding and stretching. Kneading causes the gluten strands to get stronger and longer. You're going to watch this video about how to knead, and then you're going to type in the chat 2 tips for how to knead dough. So watch the video and then type 2 tips for how to knead dough. Obviously, you would pause this video while you watch the other video. After that, we're going to go over proofing. Proofing is the time where the dough is allowed to rest and rise a final time before baking. During this time, yeast ferments the dough and produces gases, thereby leavening the dough. If you look at this ball of dough, it's stretching out because the yeast inside it is working. That yeast has sugar, moisture, and warmth. And because it has those things, it's doing its work of leavening and fermenting inside the dough. It's producing gases, it's changing the flavor of the bread. If you don't let your dough proof, your dough isn't going to taste very good. Also, if you put too much yeast in your bread, it's going to proof like kind of fast and it's going to taste really weird. So make sure you measure your yeast really accurately. So we're proofing our dough, we're leaving it out in a plastic bag, or you can put it in a bowl, put oil in the bowl, turn your dough over so it's got oil on the outside, and then put plastic wrap directly on top of the dough so there's no oxygen. You also can have it proof overnight in the refrigerator. Some people prefer proofing overnight in the refrigerator. They think that the flavor develops better. Next, you're not going to dock in your pizza, but you can if you want to. Poking holes in bread before you bake it, especially like a crust, like a pie crust, is called docking. You also do this to like potatoes before you cook them so they don't explode. But in bread, docking is poking holes so the dough doesn't puff up during baking. If you don't dock a pie crust, it'll get these little bubbles that poof up and kind of ruin the texture of your pie crust. This docking is going to let steam escape while it's baking, kind of like prevents bubbles and balloons in your dough. Right. This is a 6-minute video of Miss Wilson making pizza dough. You are going to watch this video and give 2 tips in the chat for how to make our pizza. 2 tips for how to make the pizza in the chat. Finally, about baking your pizza, you need an oven temperature of 450 degrees. This is about the hottest that your pizza will get. Professional pizza kitchens have really, really hot ovens. Like some places have like 1,000-degree ovens and they cook the pizza for like 30 seconds. Pizza is supposed to be cooked at a very hot temperature for a short amount of time. The bake time is 15 to 20 minutes. Whenever you see a time like this, a range, you're going to go with the shorter time and set your timer for 15 minutes. This is our shorter time. At 15 minutes, you're going to check on your dough. If it's ready, then you're going to take it out. After that, you're going to do 1 or 2 minutes at a time to see if it's done after that. It probably will not take more than 20 minutes. Make sure you use a timer. Use a timer. You're going to use a spatula to carefully look at the bottom of the crust. If it is white and soft, leave it in. If it's light brown, it's probably done. Hot tips. When storing your dough, squeeze out all the air from the Ziploc bag. If you don't have a Ziploc bag, put it in an oiled bowl and have plastic wrap covering the bowl, touching the dough. No air. Let the yeast activate before you add flour. Make sure that yeast bubbles up and it's totally ready before you add the flour, or else it'll mess up your dough. Use a rolling pin to make rolling the dough out easier. If you don't have a rolling pin, you can smush it. It's just your life's going to be easier if you have a rolling pin. And that's it for our presentation. Next, you need to go over our recipe for pizza and scones.